First off, I'd like to say thank you to Jose for inviting us. It was great, and the team for organising today. I'd particularly like to say thank you for Chris for the code of conduct. You ruined my talk in Lean Agile Scotland with that thing, and now it's spreading. It's no fun. Hi, I'm Chris Matz. I'm an Agile coach, and
I'm Tony Grout. I'm the head of Agile Transformation for Lloyds Banking Group and head of the engineering systems there.
He's my boss.
That's why he got out.
What we're going to do is try and share a different perspective. So quite often when we're looking at scale Agile, we're kind of pushing up from the bottom, trying to get to the top. Tony's kind of one level below this guy at the top, trying to achieve the goal. Me as the Agile coach, I'm actually not on this picture. If you go out those doors, there's a little coffee shop around the corner. That's where I am on the picture. Okay, so to start with, two volunteers. So I think Geet and Torben have volunteered. These are my two teams. I'm going to draw can we understand that this side, just, yeah, nice jumper on that side with Geet. No. Yeah, great. Mike Burrows, you're undecided. Choose a side, Mike.
He's not very sweet, it can be with me.
Right, oh, right, okay. So, competition, who can hand out, right, so everyone stand up. You can sit down when you've got a red card and a green card. So let's see which team's better at finishing first. Go. I like the fact that you're actually handing cards to your opposition. That's good.
Yeah, blue cards. You're handing out.
I like this handing out one card at a time approach. It seems to be working less well than every other attempt I've seen. Oh, who won? I'm not sure. Oh, team captains are still standing. Who's going to get to their seat first? Who's going to? And Geet won. Thank you both. I noticed two different styles of coaching there. One of them was in amongst it, and the other one was like, just let them do what they want. Okay. So, question for you. I want you to think, how many people are you responsible for transforming to Agile? Yeah? So in your mind, I want you to think of a number of the number of people the biggest kind of responsibility you've had when it comes to transforming Agile. I would like you to self-organize in a line that starts at that door, works its way around here, and then comes up here and finishes at that door. That is the lowest number. That is the highest number. Self-organize. You all familiar? Do you all know anyone not sure what to do? How many people have you been responsible for in your transformation?
The program. This side's low, this side high.
So from that door, that's low over there, that's high over here. A line down across the front and back. Actually, I think we'll take them around the edge. Do you want to grab that end and pull it around there, and I'll get this end? Right, so whoever's the highest numbers, if you can come here.
Do you want to come around here a bit?
Come around here. Highest numbers, come here. Highest numbers.
You're bunching in the middle.
Highest number here, and then we're going to go round the back by the look of it. It's how you interpret it. Right. Ever. Biggest number you can think of. So this is the highest numbers here. Come on, in a line.
Yeah.
Can we stretch up that way, please? Stretch up, stretch up, stretch up, stretch up. Please, self-organize. Nice. Let's get the line. Right. Okay, I think that's good enough. I think that's good enough. I want to do some sampling.
There's a huddle in the middle.
I want to see some sampling here. So where's 150? 150. Yeah. Okay, the reason I picked 150, it means that when you get to 150, that's, what's the name of the chap?
Dunbar.
Dunbar, that's the Dunbar number. At that point, there is no one in that organization who knows everyone in the organization, and social structures break down a bit. Okay, where's 1,500? About 1,500. The great thing about that is that if we assume that we're going to use our Scrum Masters to actually do this, help with the organization, we've just hit the Dunbar number for your Scrum Master community. Yeah? Okay, let's hear these top 4 numbers. So,
somewhere between 20 and 40,000.
20 and 40,000. 10,000. 3,000. 2,500. Okay, so basically the scaling that we're doing at the moment, Tony is responsible for about 23, and me personally, I feel I'm responsible for about 1 over there. Okay, so now we want to kind of understand where you're focused in the organization. So everyone hopefully familiar with this kind of organization. We've got the team, the program, the portfolio, we've got governance, support, and then we've got exec. So hands up if you're doing team level stuff. Okay. Hands up if you're doing program level stuff. Ooh, very cool. Portfolio level stuff. Yeah. Bigger over here, but still some over here. Governance. Who's doing governance work? Who's rewriting the methodology for the organization? Yeah, working with risk management and groups like that.
An audit.
An audit. Okay, how about support? Who's working with HR, finance, and all those other non-IT groups? Yeah? And then finally, who's working with the execs? Okay, great stuff. This is me. This is my area of responsibility-ish. I don't like the word responsibility. And this is Tony's area of responsibility. Yeah, we wanted to do that to give you a sense of the scale, but also to see that there's other people in the room that have got similar levels of experience and kind of issues. So hopefully what you're going to hear today is going to be nothing new. Yeah? Anyway, you can all sit down now. Thank you very much. We're going to use this diagram to help you understand the context of what we're talking about at each part in our talk. So the first thing we want to talk about is the program level. This is a fairly popular approach to scaling Agile, yeah, which really only relates to the program level. When it comes to actually doing a scaling Agile type thing, it's really about change management. And so the question is, which part of the organization is normally responsible for change? Perhaps it's the missing bit, the bit in the middle management. In actual fact, this is never actually the organization structure that's presented by Agile gurus. This is the true Agile organization structure. And you can see that if you're trying to implement change, what you've done is, the first thing you've done is alienate that group of people who are most likely to be helping you do this. Yeah? So that's one of the issues to consider. So I think the message here is very simple. We can ban stupidity.
So in one of the organisations I worked in previously, that's exactly what happened. Was they actually fired every middle manager. They got in some Agile coaches and they literally went, we don't need any of you anymore, thank you very much. We've read the Agile books and they don't mention your job title anywhere. So clearly we don't need any of you because we actually don't even know what your job is. So we have no job definition because all we have is, we have this thing because they were doing Scrum. We have a Scrum Master, we have a CEO, and we have product owners and people, other teams building stuff, goodbye. And then they said, and then when I came in, they were saying, well, why is it all not working? Why does nobody, we've got 300 teams trying to get stuff done, and we're not actually shipping very much. And it's like, well, maybe you've got people in the middle who used to do something at least marginally useful that actually made the system work. So then we had to start bringing people back in to actually do those other roles.
Okay. With a client, I've got a couple of clients where they've done something similar, where they've kind of sacked all the middle manager. And generally it takes 2 years for them to find out the problem, because it takes about 2 years for the organisation to adopt Scrum and Kanban and to get good at the team level. And then after 2 years, they discover that their cross-team delivery capabilities have just plummeted because they haven't got any middle managers there. So we can ban stupidity. So at the scale that we're talking about, at the team level, which approach should we go for? Scrum or Kanban?
So we're talking thousands of people.
We're talking 20,000 people, Scrum or Kanban. Can we see some cards? That's why we gave you the cards. We want you to make a commitment in terms of what you think. Scrum or Kanban? What's the best approach? Okay, we cheated with the question, thank you, because no one, actually one person did get it right. Funnily enough, you're also scaling at that level, so what a surprise. Okay, Tony.
So we're using Scrum to scale. And the reason we chose Scrum is quite interesting. At that scale, actually I can't think about teams. And I can't give them the level of coaching that every team needs to be good at Agile. So actually the odd thing is, even it feels quite weird, but I have to be much more prescriptive, and Scrum is much more prescriptive for right or wrong reasons. However, giving them a more structured framework, especially in the culture of large corporations, because they are used to being given a set of instructions and follow the instructions. Kanban needs an awful lot more thought attached to the systems thinking aspects that I can't scale quickly. So I have to give people a very simple handbook of, if you follow this approach, at least you won't break things whilst we bring you along. And I often talk about inside the organisation, we're going to use Agile with stabilizers, little stabilizers like a little bike for kids. Agile with stabilizers is going to be Scrum, and eventually when we grow up, we'll be able to use the racing bike, the carbon fiber Kanban system at the team level to actually get faster. But first, let's put some rigor and discipline around things, and let's get marginally better, and then we can get much better. But it's the rigor and discipline that Scrum provides without you having to think too much at the scale, because we can't scale the thinking easily.
So the program that Tony's created is called Scrum and Beyond. And the and beyond really means that, you do Scrum, but actually to play, you have to have a coach. So your area of the business has to fund a coach that Tony's picked. And the idea is that, you do Scrum, and if you can't do Scrum, you then speak to the coach. And the coach will work out, in your context, are you not quite doing Scrum right, so go and do Scrum first. Or, in your context, would it be better if you did Kanban? And so someone said to me the other day, are you a Scrum coach? And I went, and I had to think about it, and I went, actually, I'm an and beyond coach now.
I think the other thing is what's interesting at the scale, and this is the experience that made me think, okay, it feels odd, but I'm going to choose Scrum, is that, and I don't know, curious to know how many of you see this, is you go into teams where they are using Scrum, and they say, oh, Scrum doesn't work for us. And you go in and you go in and take a look at it, and actually, Scrum is working just fine. They're just not disciplined. And they go, we're going to use Kanban instead. And I'm like, no, you're not. Until you can damn well make Scrum work, I'm not going to let you loose on Kanban, because at least Scrum has some guardrails on it that I can check you against, whereas Kanban is much more difficult, and if you go off the rails, sometimes you'll say you're using Kanban and you'll destroy the reputation of Kanban in the organisation because you'll be doing it badly, and actually all you'll be doing is pretending to visualise work and calling it Kanban. And actually we need much more rigour around that. So that's one of the other reasons we're trying to use, we're going to use Scrum at a small scale.
Okay, cool. Program and portfolio level, it's all about queues, yeah? And mainly it's about visualizing queues and getting people to obsess about queues at that level. And it's amazing the number of different ways that queues, you get people to think about queues. Me personally now, the easiest way to find a queue is to look for a stressed person. Because a stressed person is normally sitting on the constraint. But it's queues, queues, queues. At this level, it's all about queues. And if you think about lots and lots of the practices that we have, it's all about queues.
So it's interesting. I mean, so somebody said to me the other day, Tony, what do you mean visualize queues? And how do I do that? And I said, and I was sitting at my desk and I said, well, just look at this. And there's just people queuing at my desk. And I'm like, who do you think's the bottleneck right now? Right? So, it can be very personal as well as at scale, right?
And this is a great tool for visualizing queues, but Tony.
So it's a bit funny, I go back, I rewind. I think one of the challenges most of us have in this room is that, you know the answer. And actually telling somebody it's like learning to drive. When you've learnt to drive, doesn't mean you're going to be a great driving instructor. So I looked at this when I first saw a cumulative flow diagram, and I remember my joyous experience of reading Don Reinertsen for the first time and then thinking, right, I must be able to do something with that. And then trying to understand this when somebody said, yes, but this is showing you so much information. And I was an executive at the time in IBM, running part of the labs, and I was looking at that thinking, okay, I know it's telling me lots of things, but I've got about 3 minutes before I walk into yet another meeting with another executive to fix my world, to go and tell somebody else what I think they might need to go and look at to go and fix something. And somebody's walked in with one of these, and I'm going, I have no idea whether it's good or bad. Help, right? And they're going, yes, but it shows you everything you need to know. And I'm like, well, yes, so does a 747 cockpit instrumentation panel. But right now, I'm like, crash landing, please help, right?
So what we have to do is think about our customers. Yeah, you've got busy execs, managers in charge of a department of, say, 200 or 500 people, and they don't necessarily need the detail. They need the big picture view. So the CFDs are great, but it's a case of we're perhaps giving them too much information. So this is a view that I'm very... I love to share with executives, which is simply, okay, if we've got an epic, because quite often when you're in a big organization, you have these epics that span teams or they're reasonably big. We just show the creation and the completion of stories. So the green line shows us creating the stories, and the red line shows completion of stories. And this is the ideal CFD I show them. The product owners come together at the early stages and very quickly identify most of the work that needs to be done. We get a small blip at the end where we find something we hadn't thought of. And then when it comes to completing the stories, we're seeing a very slow kind of velocity to begin with, and then the velocity increases. And what this indicates to me is they're doing the risky and the difficult stuff first, so they're bringing the risk early in the process, and then they're doing the easier stuff as we go along. And what this means, if we actually do a straight line approximation, that the date when it's actually going to be completed starts to come in. Yeah, can you see that? As opposed to this, which is the most common shape that you'll see as an executive, which is, yeah, the product owners kind of worked out what they need to do, but the team, because they're risk averse, they want to show progress as quickly as possible. So they're doing all the easy stories first, leaving all the risk and uncertainty towards the end of the process. And now we have no idea when it's going to finish. Yeah? And this is very frustrating. This is actually a real example that we had. This was a 3-month period, so this was 3 months. I think there were 100 stories in this, and the product owner in charge of this piece of work was saying, we're going to complete it in 2 weeks' time. All the manager did was make sure the data was set up correctly in Jira so that we could create that graph. And we knew with certainty that they would not be finishing in 2 weeks' time. But the key thing is, from an executive perspective, think of your executives. They're very busy. They've not got much time. They've got a queue of people standing at their desks. They need something very simple and compelling that they know how to act. And in this case, it's clear that the product owners really are making stuff up as they're going along, and that they're making stuff up faster than the developers can finish it.
So the other thing, I mean, and that's what I wanted to know as an executive. So the first thing I want to know, and I try and work with executives to say, start off just by thinking, are things getting better or worse? Most executives don't even know to start with that conversation, a lot of them. All they walk into is a red, amber, green chart, right? Today, it's red. So the top thing I'm going to focus on is which colour? Red. But that red is not the biggest thing they have to fix, because actually, that's relatively simple. It's a trivial blip in that week. Well, actually, the whole system is going completely pear-shaped because this line is diverging week on week. And most execs don't get to see this view of the world in that simple way. Going back to that first cumulative flow diagram, you can't see that problem on that chart. You can't see my world is generally getting worse or it's generally getting better. And in fact, I sit on some significant steering groups inside the organisation at large programs, especially on some of the traditional development, because I also am, king of waterfall in my organisation, which is completely bizarre. But anyway, I often say I've got 2 children, one of them more pretty than the other, but I love them kind of equally. But when you look at the waterfall ones, I'm still walking into 120-page decks with literally red, amber, greens and Gantt charts. And I'm sitting there going, does anybody know what's happening here? Because I don't have something and I just go, I just want this. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we're going to have a little competition now. So I'd like to introduce you to the CEO. Tony is now going to play the CEO of Unicorn Books. They are the world's largest book-only internet website. Yeah. And what we're looking for is some killer ideas. Yeah? Okay, so if you can shout out some ideas, put your hand up, shout out an idea, and Tony will decide whether it's good enough to make the cut.
Books on vinyl.
Books on vinyl.
I love that idea.
Come up here, please. Another one.
Books on tape.
Books on tape, Tony.
No, that's too modern. I can't.
Mike?
Stephen Fry comes to your house to read it to you.
I love that idea.
Come on.
Just-in-time books written when there is demand.
No, I'm not. No. I tried that before.
Tried it.
Come on, more big ideas. Come on, big ideas.
Direct brain reading.
I love that. Oh, that's got to be in. That's got to be in. I'm definitely
Got 3 product owners so far. We need. Come on, some more ideas. Oh, we've got a hand up at the back.
Author chat.
Pardon?
Author chat. Yes, come up. I love that.
What? Come on.
Translate a book into any language.
Translate a book.
Translate the book into any language.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's it. That's great. That's
That's
5
it.
big ideas. Okay, so there's competition here. We're now going to simulate the normal corporate environment.
Chris, hold on. Please don't forget my.
Oh yeah, sorry. The CEO told me we had to cut costs. So one of the product owners, if you'd like to come over to India, please. And we're just going to simulate you being in it. If you could take a seat, please. And if we can apply
nice
the
Indian jazz
earphones
music.
so you can't actually see what's going on. Brilliant, thank you. We're now simulating the organisation. Okay, so here's the thing. We've only got capacity to do one of the ideas, and it's very simple. Whoever's idea wins gets a bonus this year. The rest of you go home probably unemployed. So, which idea is the best idea? If the 4 of you can tell us, please.
So in terms of customer perspective, you'll be delivering the information instantly. Most customers want it now. So once they've clicked pay for my wetware version of my book, they've got it.
Who wouldn't want Stephen Fry coming around to that house?
I think you're going to have to, you're going to have to convince each other.
Well, do you know, I don't actually like Stephen Fry.
I haven't got a clue, but I really like the old idea of vinyl, being sort of a record collector in the past.
Yeah.
But that's confirmation bias, why can't we do something different?
Okay, so
If you translate it into any language, then you can sell your books to anybody in the world.
so who's going to go? Who's going to go first?
Who's going to get their work done first?
Yeah. Who's going to get their work done? Who's going to get the bonus, please?
Yours
Which one?
first.
Yeah, you need to decide between you. Who's going to go
To be
first?
fair, we need books in, let's say, our language first, so yours probably wouldn't be a... I think you're intending this way a bit more.
I'm not giving up on my idea.
What one's going to add the most value to the organisation?
I'm sorry, this isn't working. I'm going to have to promote you. Can you tell me? Can you tell me who you think is ideally the best?
Well, I'm going to say me.
Well, excellent, thanks. Now, in actual fact, the constraint that we have is actually in India. So, if we can bring the Indian product owner back on shore for a moment, please. So, it's very simple. What we'd like you to do, because you're the product owner offshore and you're actually the constraint in the organisation, as you're probably aware, which idea is the best that's going to get the promotion, the promotion and the bonus?
Remind me about the ideas again?
Books on vinyl.
Yeah.
Well, you did have one of your own.
Yes.
So you're I like the way, I like your style, yes. Let's play with them. Can you repeat your...
Books on vinyl.
Stephen Fry reads the books to you.
Right.
Books directly to your brain.
Okay.
And books in any language.
And your idea was?
I only know how to do chat.
So chat to any author. So
We only know how to do that.
which out of you is going to? You can only have one idea this quarter, including your idea.
Yeah.
So we can only get one idea done this quarter, and the person who at the end that person gets a bonus. Whoever gets their
Whoever's idea gets done gets the bonus.
We're ambitious, so we'll go books to your brain.
Wow.
Okay.
Right, so it looks like you've won. So it's you are the winner. You get the bonus, which is actually 5 copies of my book. So you could choose to keep them all to yourself, or you could choose to share them with your... Okay, thank you everybody.
Thank you. By the way, the only person who had a job at the end of that is the books to your brain person at the end of the quarter.
So this is the scenario that you will see all the while when you're operating at scale.
Yeah, so one of the things when you're normally working at scale, and I mean, you tend to have dependencies between teams. And normally what you tend to find happened is the team that certainly in a lot of organisations, there are specifically an offshore team in a lot of organisations, or there's a team that actually are not closest to the problem being solved. And yet everybody is dependent upon them, and yet nobody knows. And they are the ones who end up ordering the work for the rest of the organisation, simply because, you know, the guys over here are sitting there going, well, which order shall we work in today? Having no clue that the fact that 4 different teams are dependent upon them to get their work done, and the most important things for the business are being decided in the order that they're going to be delivered by this team ordering their work, because everybody is dependent upon them. So, and most organisations don't see it. Chris was wandering around our organisation a few weeks ago, came up rubbing his hands with glee as only Chris can, and makes me go, oh, here we go. What problem am I going to face into today? He said, oh, I've just found an example where literally there's like 3 guys offshore who are ordering the work for these 5 different teams, and these 5 different teams have no idea that they're dependent upon the work that these guys are ordering in their backlogs. And they're all and these 5 teams are going, yeah, we're all working really slowly and nobody knows why. So Chris managed to find it out, and now we're going to go and fix that. So that's what you typically see.
Yeah, so the message to take away here is very clearly, what you normally find is this structure where you've got all these people close to the customer who understand what customer value is and business value, and they're all dependent upon a frameworks type back-end system, and yet it's the frameworks back-end system that's setting the strategy for the organisation.
Yeah,
So the people with the least understanding of value to the customer are the ones who are setting the prioritization.
Now you could argue, and I'm not going to mention any particular names, but there are certain individuals in the Agile community who go, yes, but this model is dumb and wrong, because of course you wouldn't do that. You'd have feature teams. And I go, come and live in my world where there's 18,000 developers and about 250 different technologies to get anything shipped at all. If you can find me a full stack developer who can manage that, I'll buy them, right?
But they're probably going to be quite expensive as well, and we do have some cost caps.
Well, yes.
Okay, so when Tony and I worked at Skype, we basically created a system using theory of constraints that actually helped us do this for 2,000 developers, 300 Scrum teams, and 200 product owners. So previous to that, we'd had, before the merger, we'd had 30 product owners, and they could actually just get into a room together, and they all knew each other fairly well and work it through. But once we got to that scale, we found that there wasn't a single person in the organization in product who actually knew everyone in product. So we had to create a little bit of structure in order to do this. And the way we did it was very simple. We created a backlog of all the initiatives, and then for each initiative, they had to work out which teams would be impacted by that initiative. It was then the responsibility of the product owner of the initiative to go and speak to those teams and get the product owner for each team to give a swag estimate, a sweet wild ass guess. And from that, it was a very simple exercise for us to work out which of those teams were operating as constraints. Yeah? So Tony and I spoke about this at a Lean Kanban conference a couple of years ago. So if you want to know more, you can go and look at the info thing and see the detail of that. The outcome of this was this.
Yeah, so the idea here is that as we went down the work, we started to say, this is the most important thing. So just like we did here with the guys, we actually said, we made the executives order the work. Well, first of all, that was a big shock, right? What, it's not all important? So that's one of the things when you work with executives, they go, yes, but I can't, if I have to make a choice, and suddenly later on I find this one was the most important, won't I get fired? So making an order for an executive is a really tough call, right? So that was the first challenge, is we had to say, well, you've got to order the work, right? And even then, at the end of it, we still came up with, nobody wanted to admit there was this weird incongruence between the teams knew why the work had to be ordered to get their job done, and the executives still really struggled to confirm in writing that there was an order. Anyway, we had to order the work, and then the idea was we would look down the list and say, all these ones in red were the things we couldn't build because we hadn't got capacity because the teams that were needed were over-constrained. Now, first, that's a really hard message again for an executive to hear, as we saw here with the guys here. Being told your favourite special pink fluffy unicorn isn't going to get released this quarter is not a message you want to hear, but that's the way it had to be to make the system flow through faster for value.
So in order to do this, the first time we did it, we had to do it in Eastern Europe. We had 60 people in a room for 3 days in Eastern Europe. We had another session the week later in London with 60 people again in London in the room for 3 days going through this process. And then we ran it for 3 days in Redmond, might be giving a clue to the company, with 80 people. So that was a 9-day activity. And each time we did it, we ran a retrospective on the process. And each time we ran a retrospective, they said the thing that worked the best was the preparation. And the thing they wanted to improve the most was the preparation. And kind of 18 months after we started this journey, the last time that I heard that they did it in an hour online, so not even in the same room. And they'd run a whole load of simulations in a tool. So it sounds really kind of a big piece of work, and it does start that way, but once the organization learns and gets better, they get faster and faster at it. Yeah. Okay, but what it means is that your web team might actually not be working on anything this quarter, yeah? And the desktop team, because in actual fact, we prioritized the mobile activities and the marketing stuff, and it's used up all the capacity of the frameworks. One of the things, so we get the backlog out of this, but what the other thing that we get out of this, and it's a common pattern, is this is the utilization of each team. So if you can imagine, this is the teams down here, and this is their utilization. What we generally find is that 20% of the teams are at 100% utilization. Yeah. We then have a sliding scale down, and then 20% of the team have got nothing up here. And so what we're really trying to do in this process is visualize the problem. We're not trying to solve it, because depending on the context and the culture that your company's operating in, there are many different strategies that you can use to actually move the people from here to here. Yeah? So you can go for an open source approach. Yeah? But what you'll find then is that the core committers will be constrained. You can move the work to the teams. You can move the teams to the work. There's lots and lots of different strategies. But there was one key thing we learned, and that was...
So one of the things we found when we started to think about the liquidity of the work was the HR systems were getting in the way. So what we tended to find, especially you see this in larger organisations where they have one of my favourite things to throw stones at in HR, which is the stack ranking systems, where you're compared against your peers at the end of every year. No, I don't see any startup these days going, well, here's how we're going to run HR. We're going to all get you in a room, and at the end of the year, we're going to compete, have a competition between you all to see who was best, and the person who was best gets the bonus. Well, in large corporates, that's why they still work. So, and then they go, but in our values, it says we should collaborate. And you're like, oh, let me think about that for a moment. Okay, well, I don't feel inclined to collaborate. Because if I keep all of the knowledge to myself, then at the end of the year, when you judge me against how many cookies I've made, how many features I've put into the product, then when you're judging me against Fred, Joe, Margaret, and Raj, I'm going to be the one who shipped the most things because I knew the most. So we ended up in this weird dynamic where, much as we wanted to move people to work and work to people, everybody was just looking there going, yes, but that's completely in conflict to my reward system. So what we then spent a lot of time doing, one of the things I worked with a lot with HR, and especially in my last organisation, we actually got the chief people officer of a company out in Seattle to come over to the UK and look at how we were working. And she actually sat there and she went around some of the teams and she said, this is phenomenal. I've never seen people in a team commit to each other every day to do better and actually share and want to get stuff done. And she said, what's the biggest thing I could do to help? Haha. Well, Lisa, here's an ask. And within 6 months later, it wasn't the only reason, but it was one of the reasons, is that company over in Seattle disbanded the stack ranking system in order to improve team dynamics so that the teams could ship software at higher performing. It also got rid of one of the characteristics that you typically saw there, which was, as one of our colleagues calls it, build a feature, get a cookie mentality, right? Which means it doesn't matter how much value I create, it's just how much features I can put in the product. And some of their products demonstrate that, okay? So that is now changing because the culture and the corporate HR policies have changed.
And the reason that I really love this approach we've done is it made it so clear and so compelling. We visualized this problem here because, you know, if we wanted to move the people to the work, so we've got these teams, 20% of the teams are kind of completely maxed out. So there's no way we can actually achieve more of our strategic goals without getting more capacity there. You'd go and speak to another team and you'd say, right, you as a team, what we'd like you to do is go and sit next to that other team and just kind of work and do whatever you can to help them. And they'd be like, yeah, but they really know the code base there and we don't. So we're only like a third as effective as them. So we're not doing it. And this process made it very clear to the executives in the organization that the stack ranking was causing this behavior that was preventing them from achieving their organizational goals. So rather than it being a matter of opinion, we had facts. We could show them initiatives they couldn't get done because of the HR reward system. And that's one of those things. You need to really visualize with facts so that executives can go to bat.
So one of the things one of the questions, they didn't get rid of the system that tracked performance in a sense, but the individual performance, they stopped moving away from how many features did you ship and your individual contribution. One of the questions they ended up having 3 questions that you had to answer every year. And one of the key questions they said was, how did you help others deliver more? How did you help others deliver more? And then you would have to go out and you had a questionnaire you sent out to other people that they would then confirm how you'd helped them deliver more value to the business.
So one cautionary note here, in some parts, what we found was that when we got rid of stack ranking, people didn't actually know what new behaviors they should have.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, you need to be very careful about how you let people know the new behaviors they should have so they can learn them a bit before you kind of flick the switch, because otherwise it's what I call the ghost of the dead girlfriend. Yeah? We're going to complain about stack ranking, but it's already dead, so it's not the problem. But the behaviors are there as if it still exists in some places because we weren't clear enough about the new behaviors, we just got rid of the old ones. Okay, so we're now over here to governance. Now, the thing I find with governance is that when we look at a lot of the Agile literature and Kanban and Scrum and things like that, it tends to be an afterthought, tends to be an add-on, something we think of afterwards. What we're doing is we're actually making it core to our entire approach. Yeah? So when it comes to governance and to being Agile, what we're saying is, and so what we do is, for those of you who does training from the back of the room? Yeah, so for training from the back of the room, the approach we're taking is, at the end of our training course, we kind of get the course to make a commitment, and there's a social thing, so we create this manifesto, and the entire manifesto is about governance. Yeah, and we get everyone to sign up to this. We, the class of, believe that the way forward is Scrum and Beyond. That means deliver value, sustainable quality, reduce lead time, manage risk. And I am now aware of and value. So I am now saying I am consciously incompetent about Agile, Scrum, and retrospectives. Yeah? And we get them to sign up to this. But the key thing here is this bit here. Deliver value, sustainable quality, reduce lead time, and manage risk. That's our governance framework. Yeah? That's about doing Agile governance. And that is core. It's the first thing we're teaching people rather than it's the afterthought that, oh yes, we're going to do that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'm a massive fan at scale, and especially in larger organisations, is you have to use the culture to change the culture. So one of the things when I look at large scale movements of people, the first thing I look for, again, I go and find out where's the power. And what I mean by where the power is, it's like, in a bank, the power is who's got the most money and the risk and audit and governance people. So when you tackle things at scale, even though it sounds like I should be going down and working with all the teams and making all the teams work, when I think about it, I think, how do I build an ecosystem in which the teams can survive? That's my job at the scale we're at. So when I think about the ecosystem, a survivable ecosystem for Kanban and Scrum teams, the first thing you have to think about is you have to be seen to be working with finance, audit, etc., and showing that you're not some crazy guy who's turned up, who's just going to, like, you know, let's just throw all the plans away in the bin. No, finance doesn't matter anymore. You know, we just measure flow. It's lovely. It's just flow of stuff. And they're like, yes, flow of money out the door. Yes, that's flow. And I'm like, no, that's not the way we think about it. So having Chris and the guys put at this and say, no, we believe in, you know, delivering value and managing risk is fundamental. People then will start to sign up.
Okay. If you want to find out more about the governance stuff that we're doing, that we've been thinking of over the last few years, Tony and I share a blog here where we put our thinking and the things that we're trying at the moment in terms of governance.
I think the other thing to build on that a little bit, Chris, is, I don't know how you guys find, how many put your hand up if your organisation, if you're using risk as a lever at the moment, a lever to make change happen, if you're using risk. Not many. It's funny, in the Agile, I mean, I came from military aerospace, right? So I use that all the time. I go, and they go, why did you get into Agile? I'm going, because I put software on jet fighters, right? And you don't want that to fail. And I say, and if I had to choose any way of building software today to put it on jet fighters, that is the model I choose. It's what they're now using to put missile guidance software on. So, but not enough of the Agile community is talking about how to take out risk early. How many product owners are taught about using risk as a way of ordering their backlog? Not enough, right? And it's not just about risk to the market. At scale, it's about risk to the organisation. You have to think about both and manage the two. So I think the risk management piece is something we could take far more levers from to make things happen. Not just about, you know, the mechanics of flow, for example.
So this is about the exec space. So I'm sure people here have got similar experience. I often hear people say, yeah, you know what, I remember people saying, you know, if I just got an hour with the CEO, if I could have an hour with the CEO, I'd change his mind, and, you know, we'd do this Agile stuff, and it would be great, and it would be wonderful. My experience is it's about building relationships. It takes time. You have to plant the seeds. You have to plant a lot of seeds. It's where real options come. You start with lots and lots of people, and you kind of start conversations with lots and lots of people. And gradually, some of them will start to grow, and you kind of tend to those. Others don't, so you kind of ignore those. When we're at Skype, it took us about 9 months to get to the point where they'd let us try that thing with theory of constraints. So I met the exec, you know, I kind of like detected a seed of kind of support for the Agile ideas. Funnily enough, he was a big fan of real options, but he'd been taught it from the other kind of real options. But we had that shared language, and so when he had problems, I just did whatever it was necessary to help him. And he then hired a guy who was going to be organizing the whole product owner organization. And so we just made ourselves indispensable to him. We helped him fix all his problems. We made his life bearable. We did loads of stuff for him. And then a week before they were having their quarterly planning session for the product owners, he calls me up and he goes, can you come with us to Estonia? And I went, okay. And I practiced my pitch with other people. And as we were flying over there, he turned around and goes, well, you know, do you have any ideas on how we should do it? And I introduced the approach that we described earlier. And he went, yeah, let's try that. Yeah? And we tried it, and then the exec in the room said, you know what, this is working. He texted the CEO to say, hey, look at what we're doing. At that moment, I introduced the exec to the work of Todd Little. Who knows Todd Little? Yeah, Todd Little's work. It's fantastic. He's an exec who's gathered all the data on estimation, you know, actuals versus estimates. And I was able to say, look, the estimates that we're going to do here, they follow a log normal distribution or a Weibull distribution. Yeah, Troy McGuinness, anyone come up? Yeah, so Troy works closely with Todd. The exec ran the paper, and then the exec became the advocate for bad estimates. Yeah, so we had a sweet wild ass guess. But the key thing is, this wasn't something where I just walked into the room and said, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. I know more about this than you do. You're going to kind of do what I say. It took months and months and months till we got to the point where the execs trusted it as enough to make some pretty fundamental changes to the way they ran their business.
Yeah. So my experience of, and I'll talk a bit more about this later, I'm actually looking, I get to, for my pleasure, interview a lot of Agile coaches. I had to at my previous organisation. And I look for people who I have to be able to put in front of senior leadership. And there aren't many of us, if I'm honest. Because one of the things you have to be able to do in the roles I look for when you need to work with senior leaders, not with the teams, because the teams just want to do well, right? And they want to they want somebody to help them and do things. Executives have a lot of ego and hubris. So you come along going, I'm going to tell you that you suck, and I'm going to show you how to be better. Well, they haven't heard the I'm going to tell you how to get better. They've just heard, I think you suck, and the door is no longer open. And you're on your way out. Okay? You've suddenly had your pass taken off you, and you've left the building. So one of the things I look for now, the first thing is, I was fortunate enough in IBM, I was on their top talent program when I joined. I never thought I'd spend as long as I did there after I sold a business and got acquired in. But one of the things they put me on top talent was I had to basically be the bag carrier for a senior executive in IBM. Now, that is a fascinating experience, trust me. Because being the bag carrier means sometimes you have to be them. And one of the things to be them is you have to go on a very intensive sales training course, an executive sales training course. And the one of the key messages I picked up from that I use all the time, and if I'd have had it in my first 2 startups, I'd have done an awful lot better than I did, and I did okay, was first thing is, sell them what they want, not what they need. All right? Sell them what they want, not what they need, even if it's dumb. Right? Because you haven't earned the right and the relationship to sell them what they need. So the first thing you do is you get into the picture, you get to play by starting down the road of giving them what they want. And then over time, to Chris's point, you build a relationship up with them to give them what they need. Now, most Agile coaches there's a lot of Agile coaches out there who walk in with, I find it quite ironic, the answer. It's like, hold on a minute. First of all, Chris and I have met a number of people. For Chris's sins, I've made him do some of the interviews because I was losing my brain. The number of people who walk in and go, so this is the kind of thing we're looking at. How would you solve it? Well, the answer is, you use Kanban here, and we do this, we think about flow, and we do lean there, and blah, 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 bish, bosh, we've got Don Reinertsen, and we think, and I'm like, stop, right? You're going to go and talk to a head of like 2,500 people. How are you going to start that conversation? Yes, well, you do Kanban here, blah, 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 and I'm like, right, Chris, it's like, no, the first thing you're going to ask them is, what's the top 3 things on your desk that you have a problem with? And I'll go and fix those for you. And you might decide, when you go and fix them for those people, you'll use all of your mental, brain power to go and fix them using Kanban and all your lean stuff and come back and they'll go, how did you make that happen? And you'll go, well, this is how we did it. Then you've earned the right to have the conversation rather than walking in with brains as big as planets with the answer. Because unfortunately, they think they have the answer. Yeah? So this is why you have to, I think salesmanship and sales skills are really important. Yeah.
Okay. One of my mentors is in the room, so I have to be careful what I say now, otherwise he'll tell me off. But Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Yeah. And I think Peter Drucker is completely wrong. Because what culture says is that strategy, process, and agile. Yummy flavorings. As far as culture is concerned, it's kind of all that strategy said nothing. The culture will just eat you alive. At the scale we're talking about, as soon as you really get above 150 people, do you remember that point over there that we were talking earlier? As soon as you get above that, this beastie is going to kill you if you're not careful. And this is a kind of an ask I had at Lean Agile Scotland. Say hello, Chris. That man, brilliant conference. It's kind of like a complimentary conference to this one. Definitely worth a visit. Is how do we do this? Because at the moment, the problem with culture is that the people who are experts in culture are ethnographers and anthropologists, and their main aim when it comes to culture is not change it. Yeah? So that's not going to help me because I have a culture I'm not happy with, and I'd like to get to a healthy, happy culture. So this is an ask. We don't have an answer here, but we're kind of running some interesting experiments this time round in this space. But when it comes to culture, there is one really, really important aspect of culture that you need to bring in, and it's kind of counterintuitive. But in order to get that culture, in order to get rid of the hippos, the highest paid person's opinions, what we need is the metrics.
I had to let him get that in. Sorry.
Sorry about that. So anyway, we're going to just quickly summarize the main points we've been trying to make here, which is 1.
So the first thing is you have to look at the whole picture. Right? And you have to teach, one of the critical things I spend a lot of time working on is you have to teach these guys how to win, these ladies and gentlemen up here how to win, otherwise you will lose.
The governance piece, basically you can build a Ferrari, but if the people aren't happy with the brakes, someone else is always going to have their foot on the brakes the whole time, so you need to get this to actually go fast. If you don't have your support, your HR and all of that sorted out, you know what, once again the culture is going to come and bite you. Yeah. And then what we're left with is the kind of the stuff that we generally hear talked about in Agile circles, which is the team program portfolio. And that's just a small part of this. But it's a small but really key part of it.
Yep.
Okay.
The salesmanship is really important. So, I mean, if anybody has anybody here ever been on a sales training course? Some people. I mean, it's horrific, right? Don't get me wrong. I mean, I wouldn't choose to go on it. But if you haven't been on one, you need to go on something that teaches you how to sell really big things. So there's some specific methodologies that talk about how to sell really big things. which is more about relationship building. You don't, you go on a different training course on how to sell a Kit Kat to how to sell a luxury yacht, right? Now what we're selling is luxury yachts. So get yourself thinking about, do lots of research about how do people sell ideas and sell things, because that will be fundamental in your journey if you want to do things at scale. Because not everybody at the team levels just want to do things better. The senior level, you're going to have to practice your sales skills.
Cool. Culture. We need some tools in this space. We need some real actionable tools to help us understand how to kind of manage the transition of culture. It's a big ask, it's a big thing, but this is a big community. And it's probably the smartest part of the Agile community in this room. So come on, guys, we need some answers. So when it comes to culture, I want to share, I think, how we come across when we're doing the transformation to the rest of the organisation. And I think this is kind of best illustrated by this little video, if I can get it to play.
Seriously, what the hell's wrong with you people?
We're bad guys. It's what we do.
That's how the rest of your organisation perceives you people. So here's our naughty bit. So who remembers this? What's the catchphrase? Gives a job. Gives a job, yeah.
So we are looking for people in the north of England at the moment. So if anybody's sort of Manchester, Leeds, Halifax area who fancies having a big play with a really big toy set and thinks you can pass the Chris Matts interview, that's wheedled it down quite considerably, by the way. Then please give us a call. We are looking for people who really want to help and play in the space.
Okay, and finally, cues.
Any questions? Sorry.
I wouldn't let him take it out. So any questions? I saw someone limping in at the back there. They're obviously not very fit. What did you do? Run a marathon or something yesterday? Congratulations, Carl. No questions? Everyone wants coffee instead. Cool. One second.
Just thinking how you went around training people in your organisations. Was there a training program to get everyone on the same page, or was it just individual one-to-one?
So in this, so we're very early on in that journey. So we are doing experiential training. So there's awareness training for the majority, because many people in the 23,000 are not going to get to play with the new toy set for some time. So we're going to give them some awareness. So there were some organisations who literally went, all stand up on the starting line, ready, steady, go. Well, we're not going to do that with my organisation. We're doing just-in-time experiential learning as teams take on, and I've got a strategy. I'm playing how do I throttle the demand versus how do I get, and just doing just-in-time stuff. So we're not training everybody.
In terms of the theory of constraint stuff, we created a 1-hour training session, which is a game, interactive game. We've run it at a couple of conferences, which everyone who joined the company went through. So we kind of went and trained all the product owners, but then it became part of the induction at Skype that you actually understood. If you've got a great idea, what is the process by which things happen, so that everyone could see what those issues and problems were, and they didn't just go and give their mate a call because they need to get a thing, they need some capacity from one of the constrained teams. They understood that actually this is how we're doing it. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Ian.
I was quite surprised to not hear the word Conway's Law mentioned there. So it'd be interesting to hear if you felt the effects of Conway's Law, and so how have you dealt with it?
Yeah. So in the organisation I'm in now, we can't even visualise that problem well, I have to say. I mean, there's like thousands of applications with their own architectures within the application. So at the moment, the problem is almost bigger than that, if it makes sense. The problem is hidden. That problem is hidden. Let me just put it that way. In previous organisations, what we've started to see is we've started to move the people to get the architecture we needed. But that was almost, we had to help executives visualise the problem before they would actually see that they would help by moving the people or moving the work. So that does come as a bit further down when they can visualise the problem.
And I'll share another little story, which is that the way to fix Conway's Law is to hire really smart developers. So at Skype, I spent quite a bit of time working with the execs, trying to get them to buy into Conway's Law, and eventually they said, yeah, you can go and speak to that team and kind of use Conway's Law. And then I went and spoke to that team that said, well, we never heard of Conway's Law, we don't know what you're asking us to do. So I said, well, what are you doing at the moment? So, well, we just did a re-architecture of the system, and then we changed the team structure to reflect the new architecture. I went, okay, let's not bother with Conway's Law. Sorry, there was a question there.
Yes. You mentioned an interesting point. When you start talking to execs, for example, you do say 3 things that they want.
Yes.
If it's a case of an organization having a mixture of waterfall and agile practices
Yes.
to begin with,
Yes.
and they would like it not to be disturbed,
Okay.
not wanting to talk to a single exec.
Sure.
Have you had an experience of that, and how
Can I take this one?
Go on.
So this is an issue I don't think it came up. So Tony is actually in charge of methodology at Lloyd's. So he's not in charge of waterfall, he's in charge of waterfall, in Agile. He owns both Agile and waterfall. And funnily enough, as Tony's saying, it's the biggest problem we've got is not one of transforming people across and getting them to want to do it. It's actually putting the right brakes in place to actually do it at a sustainable pace, rather than just like big bang and then things fall apart. So yeah, it's key that you just don't try and do the big bang thing. No.
The challenge, we have more demand than there's so much demand from the business to go faster, that the challenge we will have is, and they've attempted to go faster before and it's not proved well, so is the reason organisations tend to get me in is because of my military aerospace background. I bring discipline first. So my view is, until you've got discipline, you don't get the rights to play, you don't get the right to play. So I always liken it when I talk to execs and go, I'm just about to give you a Formula 1 car, right? But before you get the Formula 1 car, you're going to go around the track a few times on a go-kart, right? So let's play that game first.
Cool. One more question, I think. We've got time. Where's the final person? Yeah.
I've got a question. You said with this famous game right at the start about scaling out to a large organisation, and saying that you have to go Scrum.
Yeah.
But you also have to have in your mind that there's some teams Scrum just doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Because I came to a point where I had a Scrum Masters meeting. One of the Scrum Masters having big problems with his team.
Yes.
And at first I thought it was just because they couldn't accept
Yes.
being Agile and stuff. But when I sat down and listened to what the team did, I realised they were Kanban.
Yes.
They already had been for years, but no
Yes.
one knew what they were.
Yeah, and that's why I think Chris mentioned it a little bit, is so there is an escalation route for teams to come to say, actually, it's not working for us. And then they get a coach to go in and actually look at their operating model and then say, okay, yes, you're absolutely right. Kanban is actually a better approach for you, but they have dispensation to use Kanban rather than they are allowed to. Because my worry is, again, I see the word Kanban being used too many times by teams who have failed at Scrum because they think Kanban allows them to get away with all the nonsense they've been trying to get away with. And that's not the reason we use Kanban.
And something that Tony taught me when we were at Skype, which is kind of like embedded in my brain, is if you actually look at all the Agile frameworks, what they do is they visualize problems. Yeah, they help you see what the problem is. So Scrum, what will happen is people will try it and they'll go, oh my God, this doesn't work. And you go, well, that sounds like you've got a problem with your Scrum Master. We don't have a Scrum Master. Or, we don't have a product owner. And so what Scrum and Kanban and all the Agile process, even TDD, what they do is they show the thing that's broken so the team can focus on this is the next thing we need to fix. But you often find that in these kind of traditional cultures that they're waiting for the manager to come along and fix it. And because the manager doesn't come along and fix it, Scrum doesn't work. They don't understand. What this Agile stuff will do is show you the problems to fix. It won't tell you how to write software.
Yeah, another example of that, Chris, is, so one of the things I see time and time again, I always pull the chain of people that we train on the Agile training we do and go, so here's what's going to happen, guys. What do you think the first event you're going to drop in Scrum is going to be? Which do you think it is?
Retrospective.
The retrospective, right? They drop the retrospective, and that's most teams who come to me and say, yeah, we want to do Kanban because we don't need all those events. And you're like, you do realise you're going to have to kind of do those at some point anyway, because the work they do needs to be done. It's just what Scrum does is make them, it unfortunately forces you to do them. But at some point, you have to think about continuous improvement, right? And that's what Scrum's retrospective is there to do. Now, we all know, as mature Kanban people, right, that you should be doing that all the time, not wait to the end, right? But unfortunately, most people don't do it anyway. How many people worked on waterfall projects and do a post-project review that everybody forgets about, right? So this is the thing about the whole thing about why do we get people using Scrum first and worry about and then move on to Kanban.
Okay, I think we're out of time now. Yep, we're out of time.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Thanks
you,
very much.
everybody.
Thank you.